two. 1, 2, 3.
Are you ready, America? It's time for another edition of Game On with your host, Stevie Ray Braun and Brad Bad News Bollinger. Sit back, relax, and enjoy Game On. Talking about your favorite sports and different parts of life. Might even get a little take on Lane Kiffin's wife. They tell you what they think, you're not afraid to take a stance. They'll give you the number of pleats in Charlie Weiss's pants. They're the game on guys, see sports through their eyes. Political correctness just up and dies when they give you their views on any sport you want to hear. They're the game on guys, eating fries, drinking beer.
That's right, it is Game On. Steve Braun, Brad Bollinger. What is going on, my friend?
Oh, nothing. Spring is in the air. Hope has been renewed for me. I'm feeling good. The NFL draft is upon us. The NBA playoffs are here. I feel hopeful. Dare I say hopeful, Steve?
It's week 10 of the XFL season.
That's the most important thing.
That's really why we were gone for so long. We went into a dark place with the XFL.
Yeah, it took a lot of us.
A lot out of us. Way too much, to be honest. So yeah, here we are. We're back. Like you mentioned, it is NFL draft time, and we thought, like we've done before, why not run down our own mock draft, the Game On mock draft. We'll debate, discuss, and then come to a consensus on our draft picks for Game On for this 2023 season. A reminder, you can find us in numerous places: Twitter at Game On Guys, Facebook and TikTok Game On Pod. Our website is gameonpod.com, and you can always email us at emailgameon@gmail.com. So like Brad mentioned, a lot of things going on. Spring is in the air. Masters is come and gone. We're into golf season. The weather's starting to get nice. Brad and I are going to find our way to a golf course eventually. But first, the NFL draft is next Thursday. We are recording this on Tuesday the 18th. It is a week and a day away or so from the annual player selection for the National Football League. And we'll get things going here with the first overall pick, the Carolina Panthers, with a trade earlier this offseason, trading with the Chicago Bears, moving up from the 9 spot up to the top pick. The Panthers with a new head coach in Frank Reich. A lot of new coaches on that staff, a very heavy offensive staff, a staff that's David Tepper, the owner, has put a lot of money into that coaching staff, and that's something that stood out in this offseason for the Panthers, and the fact that Tepper's kind of looked at the NFL and figured out, you know what, the one thing that doesn't seem to have a salary cap is the salaries of coaching staffs and what you can do with your staff. So he has invested there. And you look at what Carolina's needing. They need a lot. They lost Christian McCaffrey, Run CMC, last season with the trade to the 49ers. They traded away DJ Moore. And you look at all of that, and you know they're going up for a quarterback. A position that has hurt them ever since Cam Newton went away and started to not perform at that MVP caliber that he was so early in his career. And you know they're going to go there. And in my opinion, Brad, and you may go against this, but it looks like they've moved up to go after Bryce Young, the quarterback out of Alabama. the Heisman Trophy winner. It just appears that although he is undersized and everything else, that seems to be the consensus more and more as you start to hear the insiders and others throughout the NFL draft world and the NFL world talk about what could take place here. It appears that Bryce Young is the selection for the Carolina Panthers.
Yes, I actually have Bryce Young as my number one pick, quarterback out of Alabama. Really, the only knock on Bryce Young has been his size, and I have a tendency to feel like guys coming out of college, if that's their only downside, then I have to give them a chance. So I think that Carolina will give them a chance. I mean, he's in the, he tore through the toughest conference in the world. He's a top 10 graded quarterback in the last 2 years. I just think that he is the safe pick, but I also think that he is probably one of the highest ceilings too, even though we have a couple of really interesting, boomer bust type of quarterback prospects in this. I really think that Bryce Young could be pretty damn special as well. So you could get lost in the CJ Stroud and Bryce Young debate. I don't blame you either way. If you want to try Stroud, I don't knock that, but I'm more comfortable taking Bryce Young personally. I don't see them kind of throwing the Hail Mary as far as going after Anthony Richardson or Will Levis for that matter, which I don't think anybody is expecting that necessarily. But yeah, give me Bryce Young at number one for the Panthers.
All right, so our consensus when it comes to the game on first overall pick for the Carolina Panthers is the quarterback out of Alabama, Bryce Young.
All right, let's go ahead and move to number two. We have the Houston Texans, also desperately needing that quarterback position filled. Really, they have been absolutely lost ever since Deshaun Watson departed the franchise. This is where it kind of starts to get, I would say, the closest to automatic you could probably get as far as this top 10 goes. If Bryce Young is gone at number one, I think Houston is immediately running up to the podium and taking CJ Stroud at number two, and I think that's a vice versa situation. I think if Stroud goes number one, I think the Texans will happily take Young as well. Really, they have the number two pick, but it really feels in their eyes like it's the number one pick because I think they have Young and Stroud at the same level on their big board. I mean, we know what Stroud did in the playoffs. He really made a name for himself, really solidified himself as a top 3 potential pick. Great pro day as well. I mean, he's done nothing but impress, the last few outings that he's had. So I have the Houston Texans taking CJ Stroud out of Ohio State at number 2.
I'm actually going to go against you on this.
Okay.
There just seems to be a little bit too much smoke out there. Different insiders, different draft experts, all of that are starting to say maybe they're not going to go quarterback for whatever reason. Could that be a smoke show type deal? Yes, I think there's a good chance of that. I'm afraid they're going to go away from quarterback. I for whatever reason, with DeMeco Ryans coming in as the head coach for the Texans, a defensive guy, played linebacker there. I wouldn't put it past them to go Will Anderson, the edge out of Alabama.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. Do you think, you talk about the smoke screen effect and all of that. I mean, do you think that is put out there specifically to possibly field some trade offer? I mean, they want to see what the trade market is for that number 2 pick, and just for funsies, just make it seem like, hey, this 2 pick is worth shopping. So we're probably gonna take we might take a D lineman for example. So it's like, are they just posturing at this point to just see what kind of trade value they can get, and maybe if it's too good to pass up, they do it? Or do you actually think that they are not going to select a quarterback? I mean, that would be crazy, right?
I actually believe they may not select a quarterback. This is a franchise that I mean, I know they've got different people in the executive roles at the top of the organization now. But there is part of me that looks at this, and there's just so much smoke that I wouldn't put it past them to take a defensive end. And Will Anderson out of Alabama, go that route, go with Davis Mills once again for another season, see what happens, and in the back of their mind probably think there's a chance that we end up back here again. And I think there is a big part of the smoke show, hey, smoke and mirrors, that kind of deal of will the Colts come with a ridiculous offer of, hey, you can have the 4th pick and a 1st pick next year and maybe a 2nd or a 3rd somewhere and blah, 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 blah. Or the Raiders, or you go down the list. Falcons, who knows? I mean, some of these other teams that may look to move up into that 2 spot to go after C.J. Stroud because that's who they have atop their quarterback board or their draft board maybe. Yes, I think there is totally that aspect, but I also there's something about them that I could see them going a defensive player, going with the best available, going with Will Anderson and saying, hey, we're going to build here and we'll go get a quarterback next year because in our mind, they have the 12th pick. Keep that in mind. They have the 12th pick. So if C.J. Stroud, Will Levis, and Anthony Richardson are all pretty similar on their board, they may be thinking, hey, one of those guys may drop to around 12 because you start looking at the rest of the top 10, there's a number of teams there that don't necessarily need to go get a quarterback right now. So even if they have to move up 3 spots from 12 to get into the top 10, they could do that.
That is tough for me to. I mean, what?
Because
if they did,
12,
I don't think it's crazy what you're saying. First of all,
because
second of
in
all,
my mind, they can go get a Will Anderson, and if they need to, they could trade. If they have those other 3 all very similar, they're all right at the same spot. They could say, hey, we can move up to 7, we can move up to 6 if we need to from 12. I mean, yes, you're gonna have to give up something there, but is a 2nd rounder next year in the 12th pick enough to get you up to 6 or 7? Maybe. I don't know. Possibly. I mean, you just throw out all the different options, and I would have to see the trade board and all that to really know what you would be giving up exactly to move from 12 to a 7 spot or an 8 spot. But it's a possibility because I just don't see, again, this isn't a quarterback class that excites you. There is not a generational talent on this. You're not getting an Andrew Luck. You're not getting a Peyton Manning. I mean, go John Elway. Go down the list of guys that have come out previously that you're like, oh, this is once in a lifetime.
Well, what do you think the ceiling is as far as potential for any of these guys? I mean, what's the comparable here? Who do you see, like, best case scenario? Who do you see the top guy being?
I think ceiling wise, yeah, you have high ceilings with a number of them. I mean, I think personally, I think Bryce Young probably has the lowest ceiling of any of them, but he also has the highest floor of any of them. He is the safest pick. He's not a guy. I don't see him being a necessarily Pro Bowl. I mean,
is it
he would
simply
make the Pro Bowl.
because of, what don't you like? Is it simply his size? I mean, what is it?
I think a lot of it is the size. I mean, that's a lot of it with him. He's just a guy that his size, it's worrisome to me of how much does he end up getting hit in the NFL. And maybe he's able to get rid of the ball faster and all of that. But there's something about, yes, he was able to play behind the Alabama offensive line throughout his career. And there's a whole lot there. But I look at a guy like Will Levis, big arm and all of that. He's got the size. He's got that prototypical quarterback size. He was impressive 2 seasons ago, but he struggled last year. But he was also battling injury. Anthony Richardson, I mean, he's a freak. I mean, He's talented. He can chunk it a mile, but he only played 12 games or whatever. And then you go C.J. Stroud. I think he's another guy that he had some issues with accuracy at times. Vision may not have been 100 as great as some others, but he's still a talented player. But then you start looking at next year's class, in my opinion, and that's when you're like, okay, you got Caleb Williams, you got Drake May, you go down the list of some of those guys that are, you would definitely, in my mind, put those two ahead of anybody in this draft.
Well, how patient can this organization be at this point, though? I mean, you talk about a restless fan base. I mean, you're going to have the number 2 pick with potential 4 quarterback prospects going in the top 10 this year, and you're not going to take one of them and possibly, one of the 2 safest options. I feel like that is a crazy move to me because, you talk about them getting a D lineman, and it's like, well, yeah, they do have that 12 pick as well. So why not, see who's there at 12? I mean,
I completely agree.
I think, the guy the guy out of Clemson, Miles Murphy. I mean,
Yes.
I think a lot of people could fall to that 12
Van Ness
as far
at
as
Iowa.
D-line. Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
there's a number of guys that could go there at that 12 spot. And that's what I would do. I would totally take a quarterback at 2 and then go get the D lineman at 12. Get an end at 12 or whatever is there. Maybe a wide receiver in Jackson Smith in Bigba. But in my opinion, and that's why consensus-wise, I agree with you. I will say our consensus, I think, should be C.J. Stroud, the Ohio State quarterback. But in my mind, I think there's a really good chance they go a defensive end here, and that they put off until next year, and they probably try to trade back if they can to get out of this pick. May not happen. I think the Colts are fine with staying at 4 because I think they kind of look at the remaining 3, or they may look at all 4 and say, there's not one of these guys that is well above the other when you look at these 4 quarterbacks. So whoever ends up falling to us at 4, we're good with. We'll roll with it. Because at that point, that's best available. It's a position of need that we have to figure out.
There are a lot of fun question marks in this draft, I feel like.
Oh, yeah.
It might not be, the Andrew Luck type of talent as far as quarterbacks are going, but there's so much intrigue in this first, 10 even, It's like, could there be 4 quarterbacks taken? Could there only be 2 quarterbacks taken? I mean, are we going to see one of those talented D linemen going as early as number 2 even? There's just so many fascinating storylines here, and it's I think that's kind of why I'm excited to watch this year's draft.
Yeah, I'm really I'm a draft junkie. I always loved the NFL draft. I mean, I was the dork that would sit there with Excel open back in the day and type in the picks and be talking about all of it to myself and anybody in the house that would listen for all 3 days. Or 2 days back in the day. So I will be glued to it. So I agree with you in that I truly believe it should be, and I think there's a really strong possibility that it will be C.J. Stroud. But in my mind, there's enough of a possibility that it could be Will Anderson as well.
And it's the Texans, so you never know.
Exactly. So I'll let you go ahead and put the twisty tie on this second pick.
Okay. With the second pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, the Houston Texans select C.J. Stroud, quarterback, Ohio State.
All right, let's move on to the third pick, the Arizona Cardinals. New coaching staff, new GM taking over there in the desert. Cardinals will return their quarterback, Kyler Murray, even though he is coming off injury. It'll probably be mid-season at earliest for him. Colt McCoy also injured, so some question marks there. A lot of questions on what that offense will look like as Cliff Kingsbury moves on. A defensive minded head coach coming over from the Philadelphia Eagles as well to take that position as the head coach. And this is where I think that edge that I mentioned earlier, Will Anderson, will come off the board. This is a defense that has shown some signs, has some first-round picks, talented guys that have shown signs in the last season or two. Zaven Collins among those from University of Tulsa that showed signs late last season of promise. I think this is where they will go. Will Anderson, the edge out of Alabama. This is arguably the best talent on the board by so many, and just seems to be an easy pick for Arizona as they look to start a new era in the desert.
And we are on the same page with this one. I have Will Anderson going number 3 as well. First off, I kind of feel like Will Anderson had a bit of a LeBron James, Kobe Bryant type of situation where I think he had been playing at a high level for so long that we kind of forgot about how good he was. We've talked about other D linemen possibly going ahead of him, Jalen Carter, for example, and there's nothing that Will Anderson Jr. has done to make me think that he should have ever dropped. I mean, this shouldn't be a debate in my mind. I think he is that special of a talent. And, the guy coming off the edge like him, I think it could be a nice replacement because they did, lose that legend in J.J. Watt to retirement. So I've seen Will Anderson do a lot of media interviews kind of through this cycle, and I'm really impressed with his attitude. He seems like he's going to put the work in. He seems like he's going to be a leader, and I just think this is kind of a home run pick for Arizona just to kind of start building that defense around, a guy like Will Anderson Jr., who could be potentially all NFL type of player.
No doubt about it. And we've seen in the last 10 years or so that defensive end position, the edge position, however you want to call it, I've seen him listed as an outside linebacker, edge player, defensive end, whatever. But that position has grown so valuable, and so many top 5 picks that have been from that position off the edge to create pressure on the quarterback. I mean, between that and left tackles and quarterbacks, that's kind of what the top 10 most years consist of.
And like I said earlier, I think we kind of got spoiled on Anderson because we're so used to seeing him make these crazy plays each week, drawing the double teams. I mean, you name it. We just saw it consistently every week, and we saw it for a couple of years, and it's just, I find it funny that we don't have him kind of on a higher pedestal for this. I know he's talked about as one of the best in this draft, but like I see him on the very tippy top of that pedestal as far as non-quarterback prospects go.
Yeah, and that's why I think there's a strong possibility the Texans, even though it doesn't make sense for them, could go the route of taking Anderson with that second pick just because of the talent level that he brings to the field day in, day out. So with the third pick, the Arizona Cardinals, according to Game On, will take Will Anderson, the edge out of Alabama.
All right. We are on to number 4.
Yes, sir.
Steve, do you have any interest in this particular pick
Maybe
here?
just a little bit as a Indianapolis Colts fan. Who
Are
had
you
his
stressed about
heart
this?
ripped out. Yes, I am overly stressed.
Can I go ahead and get your thoughts first? Because this is your team. I feel like you
Sure.
kind of got to... Okay.
So, the last 5 years or so have been really rough. Andrew Luck, I don't know if you've ever heard of him. Very talented quarterback. He was on this team, and they surrounded him as if it was a fantasy football team and just kept taking wide receivers. And then finally they got a new general manager, and he decided to start getting offensive linemen, but through the draft in the first round, and that helped. But but it was too late, too little, too late, and Andrew Luck had already suffered serious injuries throughout his career and decided to hang it up so he could go design buildings because he had an architecture degree from Stanford. That's a very prestigious school. He's very smart, and ever since then, they've just taken the hand-me-downs from the rest of the league. If your starting quarterback was old, we took him. If your starting quarterback was not living up to his potential, we took him. And now, with the third pick, they have their fourth pick. Sorry, fourth pick. I wish it was higher. With the fourth pick, they have the opportunity to take a quarterback. And as I mentioned earlier, none of these are generational guys. None of these are guys that I would necessarily scream any other year, hey, this is a guy worth taking with a top 5 pick. And yet here we are. The future of our franchise is relying upon a flyer of a situation at quarterback, especially if, as we've played out on this Game On draft so far, you're left to Anthony Richardson, the quarterback out of Florida, and Will Levis, the Kentucky quarterback. So, it does pain me. It worries me. Both guys have potential, tons of potential. Both guys are being considered, oh, he's similar to Jalen Hurts, or he's similar to Josh Allen, or blah, blah, blah. He can move. He's got an arm. Well, we've heard that. We've heard that with so many quarterbacks, right? And yet, here we sit as a Colts fan with Gardner Minshew currently our starting quarterback until we take a quarterback more than likely here with the 4th overall pick. Do you want me to say who I think they'll go with?
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you don't feel too confident about it, but
I don't feel confident in any of these.
okay. First off, we're going to go for...
I would prefer they go...
That's what I was about to ask.
In my warped mind, I'd rather them just go best available.
Okay.
Go best available.
Is there a player you have in mind for that?
I mean, Tyree Wilson is probably your best available. Maybe a Jalen Carter. Ideally, you would try to... I'm drawing a blank now. I've got to look it up now. Hold on. Un momento. The defensive lineman that you traded for from the 49ers. Why am I DeForest Buckner?
Mm-hmm.
You try to trade him, send him somewhere, get the best available you can out of him. He's in his 8th year. You try to get something from him, for him. Maybe you go with a Jalen Carter. If all the legal stuff seems like it'll check out and it's worth taking him with the 4th pick, you go him. I would be fine with a Tyree Wilson. You build up your D-line. I also wouldn't be upset if they went with an O-lineman. The O-line's been bad. I don't think there's an O-lineman there. But if you could move down, if somebody's willing to move up to 4, and you can move back a few spots, I'd be fine with that. I'm not sold, as I've mentioned before, on any of these quarterbacks. But
how much of the fact that they've tried the route of veteran quarterbacks the past few years and it has not worked, how much does that play into this? They have to try to take a shot on one of these flyers at quarterback. Houston, do you feel the pressure mounting in Indy? I mean, I think, do you think the fans are
totally
in control of this pick?
Yes. Irsay is freaking out. I mean, the dude went with Jeff Saturday as the interim head coach, Brad. Let's just wrap our head around that for a moment. So, all that to be said, Irsay's freaking out. He's in that Jerry Jones, he won a Super Bowl with Peyton, he's been there a few times. He's been close. He wants to go win some more. And I think he sees the old clock ticking, kind of like Jerry does. Jerry Jones is like, I got to get this done before I die. Irsay's got a few more years than Jerry, probably, maybe, who knows? I mean, with how much plastic is in Jerry now, maybe not. But I think there is a lot of, we've got to get this right. We've got to get a quarterback. I'm tired of seeing dysfunction there, especially because in Irsay's mind, for a lot of his time as owner, he had Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck. And the face of the franchise were two Hall of Fame caliber quarterbacks. No, Luck won't be in the Hall of Fame, but he was that caliber even in his short career when he wasn't injured. So I think in his mind he's got to go get that. I don't think that's there at 4. I just don't. I don't think Will Levis is a guy that's going to go do that. I don't necessarily think Anthony Richardson will either. Could they? Yes, they totally could. They have the potential. They have the ceiling of that. If you look at their skill set and what they possess physically and all of that, they totally can. But they are both works in projects in my mind.
So crazy hypothetical. Either, some crazy trades happen, something happens, right? And somehow either Bryce Young or CJ Stroud has fallen to number 4. Do you feel much better about that? Is that something that would get you more on board with it?
Yeah, I think Young and Stroud are 1 and 2 or 1A, 1B, however you want to go with it. I think that's a tier, and then I think the next tier is Richardson and Levis.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in my mind. So if Young or Stroud are somehow possibly there, I think I would probably I would take either one of those. I think Stroud's a possibility. I mean, if things play out the way that I mentioned earlier, if you go Young and then Anderson, I think a Tyree Wilson would go to the Cardinals in that scenario if Anderson goes to the Texans.
Cardinals aren't taking a quarterback.
Yeah, so now if Stroud somehow falls to 4, I think, yes, they're picking up Stroud. I feel a little bit better, but I still don't. I mean, in my mind, he's a top 5 quarterback most years, potentially. I mean, he possesses some of that. I don't love it, but it's understandable because he has the body of work at least.
It just Stroud, is one thing. Bryce Young is one thing. I don't think Bryce Young is going to be there at number 4, but if he was, for example, I think Bryce Young, at the very least, can offer you kind of like a steady leadership role, and I don't think he's going to beat you. Like, he's not going to be the guy that turns the ball over and just completely implodes, right? And I think that's why he is the quote-unquote safest option.
Yes.
I think he's going to be a great leader. He's so smart. He can make throws. He didn't accomplish all he did at Alabama for no reason, right?
Right.
Like,
Ohio
the talent
State
is there.
Stroud.
Insane. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's just, man, the Colts. I mean, this is a bit of a Hail Mary. I mean, it's kind of like let's just take a shot here and hope it sticks. I don't think a lot of people are expecting it to stick, but I think you have to take the shot here. So I know we spend a lot of time on the Colts because it's your favorite team, but who do you think they're actually going to take?
I think with how it's played out and everything, I do think they will go. I think they're going to go with Will Levis.
Okay.
I think if it comes down to those, if you're having to decide between Anthony Richardson and Will Levis, I'd rather go with Richardson, just because of the athletic ability. Your head coach has come over from the Eagles, where he was with Jalen Hurts. In my mind, that's a guy that has some similar style. I mean,
right.
Both can run. They're big guys. I mean, they can throw as well. They've got cannons for an arm. now you're just talking about can you work down to the fundamentals and get things kind of cleaned up. They showed they were able to do that with Jalen Hurts, but you also have to take into account that Jalen Hurts is a freak who is meticulous with everything he has done throughout his career. I mean, he purposely went to the University of Oklahoma to play under Lincoln Riley, to become a better quarterback, and constantly was in the weight room and putting in work. And is Anthony Richardson that type of guy? And I don't know. And there's probably not a whole lot of people that do know if he is or not. But if he is, I think, yeah, you go with him. If Levis is that guy, then go with Levis, because I'd rather have somebody that's putting in the work than to say, oh, yeah, we're going to take the freak that can throw it really far and run.
Right.
Like,
Well,
I just want a quarterback at this point that is going to be in their game in, game out, and he can make some throws.
What's crazy to me is if you look at the film, I'd definitely say pre-Oklahoma Jalen Hurts. If you threw that tape up against Anthony Richardson, I'd say, well, Richardson has more actual football talent, right?
Oh, yeah, better
And,
much more refined quarterback.
Right.
Between
And
the two, yeah.
the skills, I mean, Richardson blows them out of the water.
Yes.
But it's so funny because now Jalen Hurts is the highest paid player in NFL history.
Yep.
And that just goes to show you just never know, right? Tape doesn't really tell you everything as far as heart, determination, leadership goes. But as far as this tier 2 of quarterbacks here and this number 4 pick, I think they're kind of on the exact same level to me. But like you said, what separates the pick here for me is the mobility.
Yeah.
I would like to see, and I have on my list, I have the Colts going with Anthony Richardson.
Yep.
Simply because he has fantastic mobility. And if you want to kind of look back on a recent example, I think you dive into Chicago and Justin Fields. You know, he has not been a great passer in the league, but he has made up for a little bit with his legs. I mean, he has just had a phenomenal rushing season this last season, and it's kind of a cover-up of some of the other issues that he has right now. So, if you're going to let these guys grow and develop, and it's going to take a few years for that to happen, you might as well throw the big guy who can run in on as your pick, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I have a sneaky suspicion they'll go with Levis because he just looks the.
I think it's. I'm not surprised either way.
But
so.
I think in my mind they should, and they probably will end up actually going with Anthony Richardson just because of those.
Who was the last
all those
mobile
similarities to Jalen Hurts in that he's a mobile guy and he's big and he's.
Who is the last mobile quarterback the Colts have had?
Whew. Jacoby Brissett, sort of, not really.
For sneaks, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean.
That's mobility in
Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck was mobile.
He could move, yeah.
Yeah, I mean he played like a linebacker back there. He wasn't. He was more of a belldozer.
Sure.
Type of mobile, but he was mobile. I mean.
Well, yeah. And he's got the guys like Aaron Rodgers, for example. It's like they're not going to blow you out of the water with their speed or anything, but they are able to get to their spots when the defense is slacking back or, they leave the middle wide open or anything. Like Aaron Rodgers can pick up that 10 yards if he needs to type of thing, and that was what Andrew Luck was. But, I mean, the Colts are trying to sell this to their fan base, right? They're trying to like spark something after just an abysmal season with so many questionable moves. I think why not throw Anthony Richardson in there? At the very least, maybe he'll reel off a couple of exciting runs, But that's just my personal opinion. I'm good with either one as far as the
I think it's
unanimous
Richardson.
pick here.
I think it's Richardson. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll let you have the honors.
Thank you, sir. All right, with the number 4 pick, Steve Braun's Indianapolis Colts select Anthony Richardson, quarterback, Florida.
All right, so through 4 picks, we have Bryce Young going 1 overall. The Texans taking C.J. Stroud. Will Anderson going 3rd to the Cardinals, and Anthony Richardson to the 4th pick with the Colts. That brings up the 5th pick, the Seattle Seahawks, who have received this pick from the Denver Broncos via that Russ Wilson trade season ago. Seattle coming off a unsuspecting strong season in which Geno Smith, comeback player of the year type of performance, inks a new deal. Looks like not necessarily the quarterback of the future. They could, in some reality, take a quarterback here, but I think they have bigger plans in an NFC West that could have an opening, especially this season when you start looking at things. The Rams down a little bit. 49ers questions at quarterback with Purdy and Trey Lance. And then the Cardinals' new coaching staff and Kyler Murray also out with an injury expected through at least the first half of the season. A possibility for the Seahawks with a pick here in the 5th pick overall in this draft to add a piece that could be a difference maker and really maybe tie up that Western Conference or Western Division title pretty early this upcoming season if they take care of things. And with that, I think they will go Tyree Wilson, the edge rusher out of Texas Tech. Add to that defense. You've got a lot of pieces on the offensive side. No need to worry on that side of the ball. If you were going to go with an offensive lineman, I think you move back for that. There's just not one that's worthy of going in the top 5. But I think Wilson is an edge that is dynamic enough and is a great piece for the Seattle Seahawks team.
I'm with you. I have Tyree Wilson going to the Seattle Seahawks as well. It's interesting because I feel like a lot of people might have defensive tackle Jalen Carter as the best overall prospect in this draft, and we haven't even gotten to him yet. I know he's had a little bit of off-field issues lately, but it's going to be interesting to see how far Jalen Carter drops because I do think, obviously, he is extremely talented, but Tyree Wilson is the pick here, in my opinion. I just, his versatility, being able to line up on the edge or move back inside and stop the run if he needs to, I think that's what they need there, more than just a inside, defensive presence as far as Jalen Carter would go. So, speaking from experience watching Tyree Wilson wreak havoc against my team, I would love to see Wilson go to the Seahawks. And what a nice little selection the Seahawks came upon here with that trade for Russ Wilson. This really worked out well for them. They weren't going to take a quarterback anyways, so they got into this really top-heavy side of things as far as the D-line goes, and they're going to get a good one in Tyree Wilson.
No doubt about it. So with the 5th overall pick in the Game On mock draft, the Seattle Seahawks select Tyree Wilson, edge rusher from Texas Tech University.
Okay, this is where it starts to get a little foggy in my opinion. We're heading to the number 6 pick, Detroit Lions via the Los Angeles Rams. Now, you talk about a surprising team. We just went over Seattle. I think you throw Detroit into that category as well. Mm-hmm. Down to the last week of the year trying to gain a playoff spot. Dan Campbell, head coach in Detroit, has really brought life back into that city and that franchise. They really kind of mirror his toughness, his unique personality. It is fun to watch. They are just a fun team, and they're easy to root for. I think that's the fun thing about Detroit is, none of those guys I look at and think, screw this guy. It's all got Jared Goff. How can you root against him? He's been through a lot in his career. You look at a young superstar in Amon-Ra St. Brown, Swift, all these guys. So who do they add to take that next step and reach the playoffs for the first time in, I believe, 50,000 years in Detroit? So, okay, I've been back and forth on this. I kind of see Dan Campbell. I mentioned that toughness, that grit. I see all of that coming through here. And I'm actually going to have the Detroit Lions taking defensive lineman Jalen Carter out of Georgia to really be that centerpiece in the middle of that D-line.
I don't hate that pick. I'll be honest. And I could totally see that happening. There's just, I think with the legal issues and where the Lions sit currently, you mentioned it, a lot of possibilities, a lot of potential here for the Lions as they move forward.
Desperately need secondary help, but
And they do. They
when
traded,
you get a guy who's possibly the number one overall prospect in this draft, and you picking at 6, I feel like it's going to be so hard to pass that up for them.
and I think in their mind, it's who is a guy that we can add that's a surefire thing. And I know there's no surefire things. But with the legal issues and everything else, and maybe they have enough information to say, yes, Jalen Carter, we know he will actually end up on the field. In that regard, I totally agree. I think that's the pick, and I'm fine with that being our consensus. I think they'll go Christian Gonzalez, the cornerback out of Oregon, after they traded Okuda a few weeks ago. I have a feeling that's a pick that they'll go with. Deciding to add to the defensive backfield and find other pieces to add to the D-line elsewhere. But passing up, being able to go get a DB, a corner, to be your number one corner potentially. He's going to be on the field. That's the thing. You're not having to worry about a legal issue keeping him off the field for the immediate future potentially, like you do with Jalen Carter at this moment.
Right.
But again, if they've checked everything out and they feel confident that, hey, this legal issue isn't going to be that big of a deal, then by all means, I think Jalen Carter is definitely the guy because he is right up there with Will Anderson as the most talented players in this draft.
Well, you know what, Steve? I think I'm going to concede this one. I think I'll hop on the Christian Gonzalez bandwagon with you here.
Okay.
That top 5, how that shakes out, it's going to be really interesting as far as, who the Detroit Lions take. Obviously, they traded Okuda. I think they have their sights set on one of these cornerbacks, whether it be Witherspoon, Gonzalez, whoever. I think they are set on that. But when draft day comes and you see a talent like Jalen Carter still there at number 6, I think it's going to be tempting. But I think they have a plan in place. Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon, great size, very fast, great ball skills. You convinced me to switch here. You're right. I think this is the smarter pick for them. Who knows what's going on with Jalen Carter as far as off the field. I think the off the field issues is kind of the deal breaker here as far as, how far he's going to drop. So I am on board with the consensus being Gonzalez.
And I think if they were in a, hey, we are still in rebuild, typical Lions, like this was their actual pick, they didn't receive it from the Rams. If this was they earned the 6th pick, then I think there's probably a good chance they take Jalen Carter because they would have all these other pieces that they still need. But right now, they're looking at this, and I think they're saying, hey, we can go get a guy in Christian Gonzalez to shore up our defensive backfield. And now all of a sudden, we're maybe 1 piece or 2 pieces away rather than 4 or 5. And with him as a lockdown type guy, like if he's truly the difference maker we think he is at corner, now we've got a good chance to go win the NFC North. I think that's one of those. Whereas Jalen Carter, he could make a difference at along the D line at D tackle. But that's if he's on the field and not serving time or dealing with legal issues all season long.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. Well, I guess that is me making the official announcement
Yes.
here. Okay, let's give it up for the Lions. With the number 6 pick in the NFL draft, the Detroit Lions select Christian Gonzalez, quarterback, Oregon.
All right, we move to the 7th overall pick. The Las Vegas Raiders are on the clock, and numerous avenues they could go here. Quarterback being one of those. Jimmy Garoppolo moving over from the 49ers. David Carr released, has now signed with the New Orleans Saints. So you look at what the Raiders could potentially go with here, and with what we have already done on the board, Anthony Richardson gone, Bryce Young gone, C.J. Stroud gone. It leaves Will Levis as the lone quarterback that is a consensus first-rounder by many draft experts, and that's where I think the Las Vegas Raiders would go with the quarterback, Will Levis. Yes, there's all their options that they could deal with and probably need as well, but with Josh McDaniels, the quarterback or the head coach at the helm, I think he will look to find the quarterback of the future. And with Jimmy G there is no rush to get Levis on the field immediately, which is nice. I just think the Raiders will go with quarterback Will Levis of Kentucky.
Very, very interesting. So, let me give you my thoughts here.
Okay.
Now, all of what you just mentioned, I think the Jimmy Garoppolo signing kind of sways my pick here. I think they kind of made a decision. I see what you're saying about him being the mentor, giving, whatever prospect they end up with some time to kind of develop and learn under a great professional quarterback in Jimmy Garoppolo. I get it. My thoughts here are, if they're going to do that at this point in the draft with how it shook out so far, I think, Young, Stroud, Richardson all going. You look at these next few teams, none of them are going to be in the quarterback market in these positions. In 8, 9, 10, you go all the way down, and then 11, the Titans, might take a shot if there's still someone there. So do the Raiders possibly, if they do want to go that Will Levis route, maybe they trade back a couple slots. Who knows? Why not just milk another pick out of it? You're going to get the same guy, that type of thing. So that's what I'm looking for here at the 7th spot. I just think it's kind of a reach right now at this position to take him there. That's why I have on my list the Raiders selecting Devin Witherspoon, cornerback out of Illinois. I feel like the Raiders really genuinely believe that they can compete for a playoff spot with Jimmy G at their quarterback position. I feel like they are a confident team. They know they have some great roster pieces. They added Devontae Adams. They've got all that young, exciting talent, and it's just, it feels like a reach here. I feel like you can milk a little bit more. If you do want to go the Levis route, trade back a few spots. I feel like you could really, I don't know. I feel like you could really just, take a breath at this point in the draft, because all of the stuff going on ahead of you is kind of laid the foundation of like, oh, okay, well, we're not really going to, make a move. We're not going to stretch here and try and go get the guy that we really, really want. Maybe they do want Levis. Who knows? I think they want Richardson. But if he is gone at this point, do they say, okay, well, we're fine with Levis, but let's move and maybe get a little bit more bang for our buck here. So I have Witherspoon.
I'm good with Witherspoon.
Okay.
I could see a number of positions. Witherspoon was the second guy I had listed for the Raiders. They need a DB. They need they need a lot, in my opinion.
They do need a lot. And that's why,
it
you know, you
just-
get Jimmy Garoppolo, and it's like, why waste a top 10 pick on a, you know, well, an experiment? Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Will Levis
I mean,
is an
they need-
experiment. Anthony Richardson's an experiment.
They need O-line help. They need a lot. So
You talk about Devin Witherspoon. That guy's going to be an NFL cornerback for a very long
Yes.
time. I mean, he has got the intangibles. He's not the, you know, he doesn't have the best size per se, but man, he really has a head for the game. So why not take that solid cornerback who can fill that need right away and not play roulette in this situation?
all right. So with the
See
seventh,
the Vegas
with the
roulette.
7th pick, the Las
You know what?
Vegas.
I deserve more credit for that.
It was good. It was good. With the 7th pick, the Las Vegas.
Yeah, cough it up.
Goodness, you got me. With the 7th pick, the Las Vegas Raiders select Devin Witherspoon, cornerback, Illinois. As I choke and die over here.
Yeah. Yeah.
All
You
right,
want me to
your
go
pick,
ahead and
Brad? Yeah,
okay.
you got the 8.
Okay.
You have the evens here.
Either I can call an ambulance or I can move to the 8th pick.
No,
you
you
tell
just
me.
continue on. Let me
Okay. Okay. You got it, bud. Okay, let's move on to the 8th pick. A very interesting team. Honestly, this team was one of my, you know, each year I feel like you kind of have a random team that you're rooting for whatever reasons they may be. Atlanta Falcons were this team for me last year. I mean, it could be because I have 2 of the rookies on our dynasty team. But I just think they overachieved, and they don't have a quarterback, so they couldn't really go too far, but they really competed each week. And I just love what I'm seeing out of Atlanta. Hopefully they can, you know, find the answer there at the helm, but they're not going to do it in this draft. So, with the 8th selection in the 2023 draft, I have the Falcons taking Nolan Smith, edge out of Georgia.
I don't disagree with that. I could see 2 ways here. And they are both Georgia players. I could see Nolan Smith going here to the Falcons, like you mentioned, going with the edge. Or I could see him going up the middle and going with Jalen Carter and making a move there at defensive tackle to add to that D line. I think either way works. It'll come down again to the legal issues. In my opinion, and we'll get to it, I don't see Carter getting outside of the top 10.
I don't either, but I do feel like, as the reports have shown, that you take a look at that next pick, that number 9 pick, the Bears have spent a lot of time with Jalen Carter.
Yes.
They have put in a lot of work. They have done their research, and I truly believe they have a real shot of landing him at the 9th pick. So that tells me personally that I think the Atlanta isn't completely sold on Jalen Carter, which, I mean, it would be hard for me to pass. If I was the GM, it would be hard for me to pass Jalen Carter at this point. But just, I don't know, that relationship with Chicago and Jalen Carter just feels like people know stuff that I don't type of thing. So I went ahead and went with the other Georgia Bulldog, Nolan Smith. You know, the Falcons are bringing in veterans, Calais Campbell. You got Bud Dupree. So I think it would be a nice addition to, you know, throw in this, you know, a nice edge rusher, a nice young prospect who can kind of be molded under those really talented veteran guys who have been around the block a few times and know how this league works. So do I see them wanting to potentially butt heads with a guy like Jalen Carter? Not saying he's a troublemaker or anything. I don't know. But, you know, where there's smoke, there's fire sometimes. So you have to worry about that when you're making this selection. So I have Nolan Smith there going at number 8. And I am completely fine if you want to list Carter there.
No,
but
I'm good with. Let's go Smith.
Okay.
I like Smith.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. With the 8th selection in the NFL draft, the Atlanta Falcons select Nolan Smith, edge, Georgia.
All right, with the 9th pick, the Chicago Bears on the clock after they moved back from the first overall pick, swapping picks with the Carolina Panthers. Bears need, well, they need a lot. There's a reason why they were the first overall pick in this draft. They moved back, dropping 8 spots, but picked up a massive haul along the way, allowing them to not only get DJ Moore, but also a late second round pick, a 2024 first rounder as well, and a 2025 second round pick, along with this 9th pick, all for that first overall. And with that, in my mind, and as Brad mentioned, I think this is where Jalen Carter will go. Yes, they need to get offensive line help for Justin Fields. Is there an option, though, that is better than Jalen Carter along that defensive line? I don't think there necessarily is. I think they're going to go with Carter here and go find O-linemen elsewhere. There's a reason why you're going to have a first rounder next year and a 2025 second rounder and so many options and so many picks moving forward that you can shore up some of those remaining spots as necessary moving forward as you develop your team around Justin Fields and a guy like Jalen Carter on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, obviously I agree with you. I kind of showed my hand there a little early, but I really got to give kudos to Ryan Poles for this offseason. The general manager for the Bears, he has really orchestrated that trade beautifully. They didn't want to go with a quarterback. I mean, they're going to stick with their guy Justin Fields. So they really milked, in my opinion, they milked everything they could out of that trade. Really a nice haul. And if you throw the possibility of, potentially landing the number 1 overall prospect talent-wise in this draft at number 9, then that is the perfect world for Ryan Poles in this situation. So love Jalen Carter here if he's available. You talk about the scheme that they run. I think Jalen Carter's, his abilities and his skill set really play into their scheme anyway. So it's just a perfect fit, and I think that's why they spend so much time with him.
Well, and I think they're still probably a year or two away.
Yeah.
So if you're able to get, like you've mentioned, a guy that is, if not the best, one of the top 2 players in this draft, talent-wise, at the 9th pick, and you also picked up a first-rounder next year, and multiple other picks, and a good wide receiver, all of that, I think it makes it makes that rebuild a little bit quicker potentially to get such a talented guy along your D-line. Because a guy, we've talked about it. There's a reason why edge rushers go so early. Yes, he's a D tackle, but if you are able to dominate the line, win up front, it makes everything behind you better automatically. Your corners become better when your D line is getting to the quarterback quicker because they're not having to cover as long. It's just one of those. So to be able to get that, you have, it appears you have your franchise quarterback in Justin Fields, at least going into next season. That's the potential there. All of that to say you can start building, if he is indeed the guy, around those 2 pieces.
Right.
So,
home run. You got to be happy if you're Chicago if that's the case. What a move. Even going back to the last game of the year when Houston Texans just blessed them with an absolute gift, going out and getting that victory and losing that number 1 spot to Chicago. You couldn't have wrote it any better if you were the Bears.
Yep. No doubt about it. So with the ninth pick, the Chicago Bears in the game on mock draft select Jalen Carter, defensive tackle from the University of Georgia Bulldogs.
Okay, and let's wrap up our top 10 here. Coming in at number 10, we have the defending NFC champions, the Philadelphia Eagles, via the New Orleans Saints here at 10. You got to like what you're seeing in Philadelphia. I mean, what a jump they took. Really, really impressive stuff going on there. Jalen Hurts, highest paid player in NFL history. There's not much you can knock about what the Eagles are doing. And yes, I know they kind of had some decisions to make this offseason as far as some of their D linemen go. They kind of had a wealth of riches there. I'm sure they would love one of these talented defensive linemen to drop to them at number 10, but I don't think that's going to happen necessarily. This one I'm really flexible on because I see a lot of different options here. I've even heard names like Bijan Robinson going at number 10 to the Eagles, which I don't necessarily hate. I know it's hard to take a running back that high, and I know you're not supposed to do it, but Bijan Robinson is an interesting prospect to me. I don't mind taking the risk there if I'm the Eagles because they are already competitive as is, and I feel like this is kind of like a low risk, high reward situation, right? You could get a potential franchise running back for the next 5 years to really solidify that attack. I mean, my God, you talk about Jalen Hurts, Bijan Robinson, A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert. I mean, what an offense that is and could be with that addition. I'm not shooing that away by any means, but I just don't think that that's what they're going to end up doing. So I have the Eagles taking offensive tackle Paris Johnson Jr. out of Ohio State.
I like that. I'm in the same boat as you. I think there's numerous ways the Eagles could go, just because there aren't a ton of needs. I think offensive line is probably the wisest option for the Eagles, just because you just signed your quarterback to the richest contract in NFL history. What's the one thing you want to do? You want to keep him on the field. So I think it makes a ton of sense to go get somebody that can do that. And Paris Johnson Jr. from Ohio State makes a lot of sense. The Northwestern offensive lineman, Skorinsky, also makes sense to me. He's a guy that has played at tackle. He can play guard as well. I think he would make sense, kind of a swing guy that you could throw in there as needed, because you do have an offensive line that is aging. I mean, Jason Kelsey's ready to retire. I mean, Lane Johnson has been injured often. All of that to be said, I could totally see that, and that makes the most sense to me. But I also could see them going with a Bijan Robinson and saying, hey, we add the best running back in this draft, a guy that has been compared to the same caliber of a Saquon Barkley and others, to our offense. And now all of a sudden, this becomes overly dangerous.
Could you see the Eagles trading back at this spot? Because I feel like you could get Bijan later. Simply
yes.
because of that running back stigma in the
Totally.
first round, right?
And here's the thing. If Will Levis, as this has played out in our mock draft, Will Levis is still available.
Right.
So at the very least, if you're looking at this draft and you're like, okay, we're at 10. Well, 11 is the Titans. They could go quarterback. I mean, Malik Willis didn't show anything necessarily last season. They threw him to the Wolves a little early, in my opinion. But Tannehill's not getting any younger. Willis didn't show. I mean, you went with freaking Josh Dobbs last year. Let's be honest.
That window's closing, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those where you're like, okay, Tannehill's going to go away. Do we believe in Willis? If not, this would be a great sign if they don't. If they were to move up for a Will Levis. The Texans, yes, we had them taking a quarterback, but if for some reason they don't, here's an opportunity. Hey, you can move up 2 spots and you can go get Will Levis, because if you think that he is on par with C.J. Stroud, the way this has played out, boom, all of a sudden, I mean, you just go down the list. The Buccaneers are another team that I could see moving up. Yes, they are at, I believe, 19. Yeah, they have the 19th pick.
Mm-hmm.
But they could move up 9 spots to that 10 hole, give up a first next year. If they view Will Levis worthy of that. I mean, that's all it comes down to. What are you having to give up? Eagles are sitting in, and they've got a GM in Howie Roseman that seems to just pull off incredible trades, and he always seems to win them. So, yes, he is going to be looking at, can we get more bang for our buck out of this? And there's a good possibility he does. So, do I think the Eagles make this pick? Probably not. There's a good chance they move back.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be shocked if they go Bijan. Just because to get a talented guy like that.
That feels like such a fun pick, though. If I was an Eagles fan, I think that excites the hell out of me, because it's like, yeah, you could get an offensive lineman, and I'm sure he will be a solid selection at that point. Either one of those two guys are very solid selections, but it's not like they're a superstar, Trent Williams type of a lineman in this class, right?
Yeah.
So why not? I mean, why not? You're there. You're on the precipice already.
Yeah.
Why not swing for the fences here?
Yes. I mean, that's the thing in my mind. It's like, you could add him. You don't even have to, I mean, and that's what's crazy about this team is you're not even having to play. I mean, you could add a wide receiver, and you can go with Jackson if you wanted to. I mean, there's so many possibilities. I mean, they're so stacked on paper looking at them that it's like they could go any which way, and you would, no matter what they pick, you're going to sit there and go, yep, that's a good act.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've already got
themselves
talent there,
here,
but
yeah.
like they've got, but yeah, that's a depth piece. I mean, even and it's crazy to say they're adding depth pieces at the 10th pick.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where, in my mind, Bijan is the one guy that you take, and it's like, yeah, he's an automatic starter.
Right.
He automatically becomes your guy at running back. And in my mind, he's best available by far.
Well, and what's so funny
And
that
he fills a spot. It's the one spot. Yes, their running backs are good. They've got good
right,
depth, and like
that's what I was about to say. Yeah.
But all of a sudden, you've got a guy that he's the automatic starter, and I don't think there's another person at that 10 spot that they could add.
Right.
That is that automatic starter.
Right. And I mean, even if Bijan doesn't work out, you still like your running back room, right? Like,
Yes.
they are a great depth as far as running back goes. You've got, they're adding Rashad Penny. They've got Boston Scott, Kenneth Gainwell, who is, I'm really high on Kenneth Gainwell. I think he is a really dynamic running back there. So you've got options there. So even if you swing and miss on Bijan, you're still going to be okay at the running back position.
Man, I read a deal where Nick Sirianni was like, he was hyping up Trey Sermon,
Well, yeah.
who didn't even play last year.
And let us not
He
forget.
flat out said, he was like, Trey looks really good. We really like what he can do.
Let's not forget.
We just didn't have an opportunity to put him out there.
Jalen Hurts is their quarterback.
Yes.
So their running game's going to be fine
Yes.
regardless.
I mean, that's what they have so much to add. I like going with the offensive lineman. I think that adds so much
I
depth.
think it's insurance for their team, right?
And that's where you look at everything along their offensive line, and there's a lot to say. Oh yeah, they have. I mean, just Lane Johnson himself. I mean, that's a guy that. When's the last time that he has played every single game? It's been a while.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I feel like. I mean, he plays through injuries and all that, but like, he's a guy.
It's a long season.
But again, that's one of those where it's like, do you really use the 10th pick
Right.
for what's probably going to be a back? I mean, I just don't see.
Well, they could trade back. I
And they
think
should. I think
could.
they totally should. It's just a matter of, are they going to get value for that 10th pick trading back?
Exactly. And
And
they're
if they're
still
not able
picking.
to, then I think you've got to make a pick there. And in that regard, that's when I would go with a Bijan Robinson.
Well, and they're still picking at number 30 in the first round as well. So it's like,
Yeah.
I don't think Bijan Robinson's going to be there at that point. Probably not. He might be. I don't think he would, just because he is that impressive of a running back talent to me. I know you don't take the running backs in the first round, but when a guy like Bijan comes out, I feel like you have to give him a look. But yeah, they have that number 30 pick in the first round as well. So it's like they don't have to make a move. They don't have to make a selection at 10. I really don't see why they would, unless they are really just sold on someone. But if you want to take Bijan, you can move back. If you wanted to take one of the linemen, you can move back even. I mean, there's so much available to them.
The best thing for them is for the draft to play out has how it has in our mock draft, where you have Will Levis, or really you have one of those 4 quarterbacks still
Right.
available at 10.
Right.
Because, and depending on who it is, and it more than likely will be Levis. I mean, I that's who I think. If any quarterback is really going to slide in this draft, I think it's going to be Will Levis.
Agreed. He's the odd man out to me.
And I just think you've got a possibility there where somebody is going to move up. But the other side of that is, do you have 2 somebodies? That's where you've got to have 2. Because if it's just the Titans, why are they going to move up 1 spot to go get him? Unless they know that, hey, the Buccaneers really like Levis. They had him top 5, and they see it worthwhile to move up 9 spots to go get him because they know they're not going to be able to. Or whoever. I mean, you can rattle off a list of names of guys that may be able to, or teams that might be interested in him. I mean, Green Bay is another one. Do they really love Jordan Love? Could they look at this and say, hey, I don't think they're one that's going to trade up, but them sitting at 15, that's where a Levis, could he slide there? And they say, you know what? We had him top 5 or top 7 or whatever. Who knows where they had him. But we graded him right there with Jordan Love or even above Jordan Love. And at this point, it makes sense for us to go ahead and take him.
Yeah.
Because it starts that 5-year. I mean, that's the biggest thing about first-round picks. You have basically 5 years. You get them for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
You get them on their rookie contract for 5 years. So when it comes to quarterbacks, they're cheaper. I mean, just look at what Jalen Hurts signed for. And you're usually not re-signing them until you're going into that 4th year anymore. Thanks to, amongst them, Carson Wentz and others. But you start looking at it, and does it make sense to move up and get him? I mean,
yeah, and you mentioned you get the 5 years out of these rookies. You get them on the rookie contract. You're not paying them a crazy amount of money, really, and it's like that also kind of adds to this Bijan Robinson thing, because what window are running backs most effective within their first 5 years,
yes,
right?
yes.
Because they fall off dramatically. That is the shortest shelf life out of any position in the NFL. I mean, running backs just do not hold up. It's too much wear and tear. There's too much going on. So you tell me you get Bijan Robinson on a rookie deal for the next 5 years. I mean, come on.
Oh yeah, and you would just, I mean, you would ride him.
Jalen Hurts and Bijan Robinson together. Come on. A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert. My God.
Can you imagine that RPO?
I know. It's insane. That's why it's too good for me to pass up.
Yeah,
I mean, I think they're taking a lineman still, but it's too good for me to pass up.
And that's the thing. I think they're going to take Bijan, but I think they should take Bijan. I think there's a really good possibility they do, but I'm not against going with Johnson, the offensive tackle,
Yeah.
out of Ohio
Well,
State.
they should trade back. I mean, is what they should
Yes.
do. But in the mock draft situation like ours, we're not doing trades, right? We're just
We're not.
picking them as they are. So at 10, I mean,
Where you want to go, it's up to you. I'm good either way. You already said Paris Johnson. I'm good with going with Paris Johnson.
Are we trying to go for accuracy? Like, are we going for like our reputation on the line here? Are we trying to like get fun with it and take a long shot type of thing?
Oh. It's up to you. I'll let you go either way.
Oh. Oh boy. You know what? Let's have some fun. I'll take Bijan at number 10. What do you say?
All right.
It would be so much fun if they did that. I just hope they do it.
There we go.
And if they trade back and still get them, I feel like we get half credit for that.
Half credit. We'll take half credit. That's what we lived off of in high school.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
We're kind of dumb, yeah.
Yes. Woohoo. All right. So, with all that being said, let me get readjusted here, situated. Bijan Robinson, 10 to the Philadelphia Eagles is what we went with there. And the 2023 mock draft. So, with the 2023 Game On mock draft, the first overall pick, the Carolina Panthers pick is in. And they will go with the Heisman Trophy winner, quarterback out of Alabama, Bryce Young.
Beautiful. All right. With the number 2 pick in the NFL draft, the Houston Texans select quarterback C.J. Stroud out of Ohio State University.
Third pick is in, and the Cardinals go with the best player in this draft, the edge rusher out of Alabama. Roll Tide, Will Anderson heads to the desert.
With the 4th pick in the Game On NFL mock draft for 2023, the Indianapolis Colts are desperate. They are reaching, and they are taking quarterback Anthony Richardson out of Florida.
With the 5th pick, and maybe the hardest pick so far in this Game On mock draft, the Seattle Seahawks, thanks to the Russell Wilson trade, they don't go with Jalen Carter. No, they go with the defensive edge out of Texas Tech, Tyree Wilson, with the 5th overall pick.
And coming in at number 6, we have America's darling, the Detroit Lions, selecting Christian Gonzalez, cornerback, Oregon.
Raiders on the clock. They could go a number of options. Quarterback, offensive line, but they go defense. Devin Witherspoon, cornerback, Illinois, the 7th overall pick in this Game On mock draft.
Okay. Coming in at number 8 in the Game On NFL mock draft 2023, we have the Dirty Birds, Atlanta Falcons, taking a Georgia defensive lineman. But who, you ask? not Jalen Carter. The Atlanta Falcons are selecting Nolan Smith, edge rusher, Georgia Bulldogs.
The slide stops at 9. Jalen Carter off the board to the Chicago Bears. They get that big defensive lineman up front in the midway to start the rebuild and give them a cornerstone on the defensive side of the ball to pair with the offensive side of Justin Fields for this franchise as they look to turn things around heading into 2023.
And rounding up the 2023 Game On NFL Mock Draft, we have the defending NFC champions adding to the already dynamic offense. We have the Eagles selecting Bijan Robinson, running back, University of Texas. And boy, how fun that is. How fun that's going to be. Jalen Hurts, Bijan Robinson, read option, throwing it out to A.J. Brown, throwing it to Dallas Goedert. Give it all to me. I'd never liked the Eagles, but I like them now. Why not? Go Eagles, go.
And that is the 2023 Game On NFL Mock Draft. Top 10 complete here on Game On. Brad, I think that went well, man.
I'm interested to see how our selections shake out. Do want to make it clear that we get half credit if the Eagles trade back and still get Bijan.
Yes, we do indeed.
Yeah, a lot of fun, Steve. It was good to be back.
Great
really
to be
enjoyed
back.
this. We're both big fans of the draft. You are one of the biggest draft heads in the world, so I'm glad we got to do this. Going to get a lot of fun content out of this, and I would love to hear from the listeners, all of our TikTok fans, everybody out there who listens or watches our stuff. Please let us know what you think. Interaction on the NFL draft is one of the funnest events of the year, so look forward to the friendly banter, and can't wait to see how it all shakes out next week.
Make sure to follow us on TikTok and Facebook, Game On Pod, on those two. Twitter at Game On Guys as well. Our website, GameOnPod.com. You can always email us, emailgameon@gmail.com. We will have Brad and I's individual predictions in the coming week or so as we get closer to the NFL draft. Until next time, I am Steve Braun. That was Brad Bollinger. This has been Game On.